not going to be in the Army longer than 4 years, and I don't want to be in training for 9 months to a month. So my first name is Robert, and right next to 31 Sierra was 31 Romeo. And I said, hey, well, what about 31R? They was like, yeah, they was like, you can get $9,000. And I was like, well, how long is the training? They said the training was 16 weeks, and it's a 4-year enlistment. I said, sign me up.
Robert, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. I think a really good way to kick off is just, if you could give us the really quick 90 seconds, tell us what your job is, and then, of course, we'll dig into the details.
Yes, thank you for having me on the show. My name is Robert Shepard, originally from Greensboro, Alabama, and currently I'm a logistics officer. My official title is a support operation officer for a sustainment brigade at Fort Drum, 10th Mountain Division. I'm responsible for synchronizing and facilitating logistics support for the entire division. So that's my current job, and that's what I do.
Got it. All right. So thank you for that. Let's start with just, way back when. Let's start way at the beginning. When you were young, did you know you wanted to join the military? What were your interests? What did you think you were going to be when you grew up?
So starting back, just to answer the first question, when I was younger, no, military was not on my list to be a part of. I wasn't anti-military. It just wasn't something that I was thinking about. But I did have family members that are military associated. So both of my grandfathers, my paternal grandfather fought in World War I, and my maternal grandfather fought in the Korean War. So I've had a connection with it. Had two uncles that served. One was in the reserves, and another one retired after 24 years as a lieutenant colonel in the Signal Corps. So the Army wasn't ideally for me. Like I didn't even, as a matter of fact, in high school, they offered that if you took the ASVAB, you got a half a day off. I didn't even take the ASVAB in high school because I was like, I'm not going to the Army. But after high school, I went to Alabama A&M University, which the hat that I have on right now in Huntsville, Alabama. And I was going to school to be a civil engineer. That was my idea of what I wanted to do. And I realized my first week of class that civil engineering was not something that was going to fit me, just fit me and my personality. Nothing against it. It's just, I can remember my first college class was technical drafting. And I don't know if everybody know what technical drafting is, but I was sitting in the classroom drawing lines for 2 hours. And I was like, yeah, this is not what I wanted to do. But yeah, from there, I ended up just being honest and transparent. I ended up not being academically responsible. I'll put it like that while first in school. I say I was preoccupied with extracurricular activities. And end up getting on academic probation, and end up being suspended for a semester. And in that, I sat down and thought about it and took responsibility for my actions. And that led me to making the decision to join the Army. And I enlisted in the Army in February 2000.
Okay. Did you join like as a reservist, or did you go active duty, National Guard?
I went straight active duty. Active duty. Yeah.
And it was just to get yourself straight, or did you just find a job there that you liked?
Well, to be honest, I pride myself for saying my college education didn't cost my parents a dime. They did a phenomenal job, provide me an environment to grow up in where I was, very supportive and loving an environment. And because of my decisions, which led me to be academically suspended, I did not want them to even have to bear the burden of it. So as a 19, 20-year-old individual, just turned 20, I decided, I said, you know what, I need to do something. And, saw the old school Be All You Can Be Army commercial came on and decided to join. And, the job that I picked to be honest with you, it is a funny story about how I picked my job. But I was communication. I was a 31 Romeo. The official title of it is a multi-channel transmission systems operator / maintainer.
Okay.
So that sounds good. But what I did was I worked on radios and I did line of sight shots. So put up antennas and radios and work in telecommunications. But how I picked my job is I took the pre-ASVAB and I scored high on the ASVAB. So they was like, you could pick any job. And I looked down the list. And at the time, they were offering bonuses. So I was like, hey, I want a bonus. And I remember they offered me a linguist. And they would say, you can get $20,000. And I was like, what's a linguist? And they told me, hey, you learn a language and you'll be kind of like an interpreter. But then I was like, okay, how long is the training? And it was like a year. And then it was like, how long is the enlistment? They were like 6 years. I said, I'm not going to be in the Army for longer than 4 years. And I don't want to be in training for a year. So I didn't pick that. Now, my last name is Shepherd. And it was 31 Sierra at the time. And I was like, hey, what about 31S? That's a tactical satellite. And they would say, we'll give you $17,000. I was like, that sounds great. What do you do? Oh, you work with satellites and this, that, and the third. I was like, fine, no problem. How long the training? 9 months to a year. How long the enlistment? 6 years. Not going to be in the Army longer than 4 years. And I don't want to be in training for 9 months to a month. So my first name is Robert. And right next to 31 Sierra was 31 Romeo. And I said, hey, well, what about 31R? They was like, yeah, they was like, you can get $9,000. And I was like, well, how long is the training? They said the training was 16 weeks. And it's a 4-year enlistment. I said, sign me up. That's how I picked my job.
Off of letters and the numbers. And the
letters
bonus.
and the numbers. And it's funny, though, that I was not going to be in the Army longer than 4 years. And in February, I hit 23 years in the Army. Like, that's the thing. But everything worked out. And I was able to pick my duty station. I ended up picking Fort Hood. And the reason why I picked Fort Hood as my first duty station, because my brother had recently moved to Dallas. So it was like 2 hours away from my brother. So that was my logic behind me picking my job and my first duty station.
Robert, just for our listeners, you mentioned the ASVAB a couple times. Would you mind telling them what that is?
Yeah, so the ASVAB is a test that it's pretty much an aptitude test that all military personnel come in as far as with enlisting. And they give you a score, which will kind of, it's a score that they use to tell you to identify what jobs that you are better suited for. So most of the time, I know a lot of high schools, they allow their kids to take the ASVAB. But then like I did post high school, they took me to, the recruiter took me to MEPS. That's the military. That's where you go in and process. So if you get ready to go to basic training, they'll take you to different MEPS stations around the country. And I went there and I took the ASVAB. I'm dating myself right now, right? I took the ASVAB Super Bowl Sunday when the Titans played the Rams in 1999. right in 2000. Right in 2000. So, yeah.
Kurt Warner was the quarterback, maybe?
Kurt Warner and Steve McNair was the starting quarterbacks.
There you go. Wow. All right. So if we could even go back a little bit just before you joined the Army, were there any other jobs you had in high school or before you joined that were, either similar that helped you get ready or that were just way off, like totally different path?
Well, I would say I've had many jobs. I literally had a job since I was 13. So at 13, my mom, I worked a summer job. My mom was over the, it's called a free lunch program. There was a feeding program where they provided free lunch throughout the county. And I worked on the truck that went and delivered it. So I worked that at 13. And then while I was in high school, I ended up working at this restaurant in my hometown called Ward's. It's a fast food restaurant. So I worked there my senior year. My summer between junior and sophomore and junior year, I worked at Piggly Wiggly. I was a bagger. And, that's a grocery store, like a Southern grocery store. Well, I'm not going to say Southern because they got a Piggly Wiggly up here in Watertown in New York that I was like shocked to see. But I worked there. But my biggest influence as far as I would say translating into the military is I've always been a part of groups, like growing up in choirs. I was in the band, played sports, little league sports, played basketball, football, ran track, baseball as younger. But that sense of being in a community, being a part of a team, really translate more to that's the correlation that I correlate the most between the military and my background. And then while in college, I worked at Shoney's in Huntsville, and I marched in the band for a year at Alabama A&M University as well. So I gotta I'm like all over the place. I know it sounds funny, but I went from all-state band to all-state football back to band in college. So it's kind of, that's a unique thing.
Yeah, we love that context because I think a lot of people are always worried when they're in let's say a grocery store job and they're like, I'm going to be in a dead end, but it's never really the dead end, right?
No, it's not. And it's about lessons learned in it. Like I learned about the the psychology, organizational psychology that really helped me understand certain dynamics of, having a manager or working with other people and me, and the different dynamic of me being 16 and working a job just for extra money compared to I'm working with people who are taking care of their families. It's just those different dynamics where I would say I would not look at it as a bad thing, but just take those things and learn. I wasn't thinking long term, but as I reflect back, I just always had an open mindset, open eyes to kind of I just always took everything in. And to be honest, Eric and Andrew, a lot of the tangible things that I was doing at 16, i.e. were just doing my job, not really have to be reminded on things that I needed to do, getting an understanding of what am I expected to do, and just doing it. I was able to gain trust for people in leadership. And even as a 16-year-old, there were things that they just allowed me to do because I've always just did what I was supposed to do.
Yeah, no, I think those are really great lessons. It's interesting that you've never really planned it out, right? Mm-hmm. That actually could lead us pretty good. It's a pretty good segue back to what made you go past the 4 years then in the enlistment.
So to be honest,
was that planned then?
No, it wasn't. And I tell people this all the time. With working outside of the military and joining the military is not a hard job, man.
I know what you mean.
It's not a hard job. The thing that really and the thing that keeps me serving beyond 20 years is the same thing. I know we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but I met you, Eric, 7 years ago now, man, and it doesn't seem like 7 years ago. But we've been able to connect with people, meet different people from different backgrounds, and learn from different people. Because the Army is a melting pot. It is a real melting pot where you get to interact with different people from so many different places. You get to meet people that becomes part of your family that's not blood, and you factor that into it wasn't really a hard job. I was like, man, let me keep serving. And that right there is the reason why I continue to serve.
Okay. Yeah. And then how much longer did you go as an on the enlisted side? Because at some point you transitioned to the officer side.
Yeah. So I stayed enlisted for a total of 10 years. And how I commissioned, the Army has a program called Green to Gold, and that's a program where they allow enlisted personnel to become an officer, and you can do that through the OCS program, the Officer Candidate School program, where if you already have a degree, you can literally come in the Army, go to basic training, finish basic training, and go straight to OCS, and then you will be commissioned as an officer. The Army Green to Gold program is one where you can be a 2, 3, or 4 year program, where you can either do where they will you can get out the military as with a good chapter and become a cadet and start at year one and do 4 years in the ROTC program, or You can do 3 years, depends on how long your how much college credits you have. But the active duty option that the Army had was you had to be academically a junior, and you could, if selected, you could basically be a full-time college student for 2 years and still get paid on active duty, and that time still count towards your retirement. And then once you commission, right, you just commission after your senior year and graduate, you commission, and that's what I did. So I had a sweet gig, man. Like got paid. I made it up to the rank of Sergeant First Class, E7, in 8 years, and got selected for Green and Gold, and did that for 2 years, and that led me to commission, and that's how I commissioned. And I went through. You were
getting paid Sergeant First Class pay while going to college.
Yes, I was getting paid Sergeant First Class pay. My pay did not stop. The only thing is I had to pay for school myself, which I just used my GI Bill while I was in school. So technically, I didn't have to pay for school.
And just for everyone's context who's watching this, a Sergeant First Class, from a retirement standpoint, okay, you could do 20 years in the Army. Sergeant First Class is one rank above the average retirement rank. So generally, most enlisted soldiers retire at Staff Sergeant. So Robert was Sergeant First Class, which is one above the general retirement. So he was getting paid that amount for the whole time in college. I did not know that. I thought it was like sergeant pay or something. Like you would have been promoted in a way.
That's why I said the active duty option. That's why I call it active duty option. And at the time, I would say, we was dealing with the surge in Iraq, and there was needing personnel. And I'm glad I was one of 100. I was one of 200 personnel selected for that year out of like 2,200 applicants. So I was selected for that program, and I'm grateful for that program. But yeah, and I would say this: the skills that I learned while working, while younger, being a part of the team, being part of all of those different teams, football, band, baseball, basketball, track, in the choirs and all that translated to me going in the military, which translated to me like, this is not bragging. I'm just being honest. Eric, I went from E1 to E6 in 4 years and 4 months. So and
just to be honest, for context, E6 is that Staff Sergeant that we were talking about earlier.
It's Staff Sergeant, yes. I went from E1 to E6 in 4 months, and what helped me get there was at basic training. I just did what I've always was doing, being a part of a team, helping people out, and I ended up getting selected by my platoon to be promoted at the end of basic training. So I got promoted to E2. When I went to advanced individual training, that's our AIT, where you go and learn the job skill that you join for. I was selected to be the student first sergeant, so I was responsible for all of the students. Then when I got to my duty station, I just did my job and did everything, like the same thing, the same kind of mindset that I was working at Piggly Wiggly. I had that same mindset when I got to my duty station and just did what I was supposed to do, man. I wasn't trying to be seen or anything. If I was just supposed to do it, I went on and did it. And the reason why, and I'm going to say this is going to make you laugh, because I'm really lazy, man. I mean, I'm just being honest with you. I'm really lazy. So I realized very quickly that if you just do your job and always be known to do your job, people don't bother you that much because they trust that you're doing it. So I was like, okay, I figured that game out. I just started doing it. And I would tell you, man, that has worked well for me. I just put it like that. That's worked well for me.
Well, clearly it's worked out. I mean, how did you get from like E6 to E7? Because that's a hard hurdle to do as well, right? Did you have to do anything in addition for the leadership skills or development? Like, did you do anything special in order to get that rank?
Well, I would say one of the things that contributed to that is, during my enlisted time, I deployed twice. I deployed, and I'm finna again date myself, Eric. I was in Iraq in September of 2003.
Oh,
Back when it was, back when it kicked off. So
invasion.
It's funny because my son was born while I was in Iraq, and he graduated high school last year. So like that's kind of the context of how long it was ago. But you know, I had some combat experience, and then I ended up getting deployed again in 2006 or 2007 for the surge. And I was on a military transition team, a MIT team, where it was 10 of us embedded with an Iraqi infantry battalion that we was away from everybody else, and we were serving as an advisors. So the same concept that they did back in Vietnam, that's the same concept that they did in standing that up. And I deployed on that. And I would say that that deployment, as well as other leadership positions that I've had, really helped kind of get me over the hump, as well as going to school too, because I prioritized going to school while I was at Fort Riley. And I got enough to have an associate's degree, which made me eligible for the Green to Gold program. So that's why I focus on that. And a combination of all of that really helped made me competitive for Sergeant First Class. And, you know, like I say again, man, I just did my job, and any job that I had, I just took it on and ran with it.
Did you have good mentors? Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, did you have good mentors that helped you throughout this path, especially also to guide you to transition to the officer side? You know, most people don't do that transition.
So I've had multiple mentors. I had multiple people who reached out to me, and there's multiple people that I reached out to myself because I saw how they operated. I saw that they carried themselves in a manner where I wanted to emulate, and I just went and talked to them, and I asked them questions. And this is the thing about it, and I'm glad you asked that question, is sometimes mentors seek you out, but most of the time you need to seek mentors out. And it's seeking them out to ask them, like, you can see if they're doing something that you may want to do or may feel like you can do. It's okay to reach out to them and be like, hey, you know, ask them certain questions, or just follow them on, especially now, it wasn't social media when I joined, but follow them on social media or just reach out to them. And I would tell you, as somebody who has been a mentee as well as a mentor, I've always reached out and kept an open door to share experiences to help those that may be asking and maybe trying to get to where I'm getting to do that. And Eric and Andrew, that's the reason why I went Green to Go. That is the reason why. Mm-hmm. Because I wanted to be an example for soldiers to see, well, how did he do it? If he could do it, then I can do it.
Mm-hmm. Robert, do you have any kind of like tips and tricks, any things that you've learned around how to manage a relationship with a mentor? You know, like, how do you actually go forward and ask someone for help? How do you stay accountable? How do you figure out what it is that you can expect from a mentor?
Oh, yeah. So the first tip that I have is, you know, you have to, as an individual, especially that one that's seeking mentorship, you have to have an open mind and be willing to be mentored. And what I mean by that is you got to lay all pride down to the side. You may have some strengths that you already have, but you have to embrace candor, and also have a mindset to improve every day. I'm a huge Alabama fan. And what I like about Coach Nick Saban, is his relentless mindset, relentless pursuit of always improving. And, you know, and I would say if you're seeking mentorship, you have to have that mindset of, hey, I want to get better. And I also sought people out that, and you have to, as a mentee, you have to submit yourself to the development or the knowledge of that mentor. Not saying that you have to agree with everything they're saying, but you have to have the mindset to be willing to accept being mentored, because sometimes being mentored is not comfortable. It's not fun at sometimes. It's not exciting. And you don't always get the pat on the back of people telling you, hey, good job, buddy. You get the attaboys and all that. No, real mentorship is saying, hey, you need to tighten up. Hey, you need to look at this area. You need to improve over here. And one thing like that I learned going back to our time in Korea, Eric, my battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel at the time, but right now, Colonel Latanya Jordan,
yep.
She was relentless on your ability to communicate effectively through writing, right? So I had to tighten up my shot group. Yes, I had a college degree and this, that, and the third, but when I say she was the type, Eric, the way she would correct Army regulations on proper English, and the reason why I say that is it wasn't fun getting my correspondence always kicked back with corrections and, this, that, and the third, but it forced me to read more. It forced me to write more. It forced me to look at things differently to where now I am reaping the benefits of it, because it helped me in areas where I needed assistance with, that if I didn't humble myself, I could have just stayed hard-headed and stayed down the path that I was going. But once I embraced it, I can remember moving on to my next job from Korea and had multiple of my correspondence being forwarded up to 3 and 4 star levels in emails that I've written because of those lessons that I learned from one of my former commanders. So I had to humble myself, be able to look in the mirror to see where I need improvements at. And that's the power that I say about being open to growth and being willing to submit yourself to the mentorship.
Yeah, that's really great advice. Did you always seek them out, or did mentors gravitate to you just because you had that mentality?
So I would say this, in most of my career, I've been sought out just for how I carried myself, and kind of the same thing I do now. If I see somebody that has the right mindset, because honestly, I don't want to waste time mentoring somebody that don't have the right mindset. As a matter of fact, I refuse to. And a lot of times some of my mentors, they would give me information and to see what I would do with that information before they invest some time, energy, and effort into me. And I can tell this story about when I was trying to go green to gold. So Eric, I had redeployed from Iraq on the mid team, got stationed at Fort Gordon, and I've already had it lined up. I'm going to Fort Gordon. I'm going to the education center, and I'm going to talk to this lady about how do I do a green to gold packet, to a counselor. And I went in and talked to the lady. It was like, hey, Staff Sergeant Shepard, hey, this is what I want to do. Blase, I want to go green to gold. And you know what she told me? She said, if you want to be officer bad enough, you'll figure it out. Now, Eric, I was, like we say down south using it, I was 38 hot. Like I was pissed off. And I was pissed off because I'm like, that's your job to tell me what I need to do so that I can do this, what I wanted to do. And, but what I did was I figured it out. I went to Google, I researched, find out all of the things that I needed to find out, ended up getting everything I needed to do and submitting the packet and got selected. And once I got selected, I went back to the education center and the same lady saw me, called me into the office. Now I didn't know at the time, she was a major in the reserves. And she said, first of all, she congratulated me. She said, I want to let you know that I'm very proud of you. And she said, I know you probably was upset at me, but she said, I tell people all of the time specific things that they need to do and nobody follow through on it. Mm-hmm. So she just thanked me. Now, at the time I was mad, but that was just really showing that I had the mindset of, I was going to figure it out. And I just did it. And I did my own research. You know what I'm saying? And I think a lot of times what a lot of mentees expect people to do is to give them all the answers to the test. But a true mentor will tell you what books you need to read or what chapters you need to read so you can go read it yourself. And then you can come back and follow up.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because otherwise they would be wasting a lot of their time to try to just coach you when you don't even want to be coached. Yeah, I can understand that.
And that's why I said most of it I was sought out, because they saw that I was just already just kind of doing it. And I find myself doing that today. Like, I got business cards made for like, me being in the Army, and I carry them around with me all the time. And I have certain people that I see, and I'll be like, hey, this is my card, reach out to them. Some do, most don't. Mm-hmm. But that's just my way to see how bad you want it. And if you want it, I don't mind helping you at all. But I'm not finna waste my time trying to make myself accessible as a mentor, where I'm chasing you down instead of you seeking that. Because this is not a bad thing, and I'm not saying this to be arrogant. But if you're trying to get to where I'm at now, I'm already there. I will help, but you know what I'm saying? I don't have to pull you up. You have to want to be up. And I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. What about the reverse side? Like, have you ever asked to get mentored by somebody, or has someone done that to you, asked you? And then how did that relationship play out? So what was that dynamic like? Most
of them, there have been some where I reached out to people and they didn't respond. And at the time I was frustrated, because it was frustrating because it was like you getting ignored. But then, as I grew older and realized, like, I'm appreciative of it, because when we're talking about mentorship, there has to be a mutual commitment to that relationship, that dynamic of that relationship. And that mutual commitment, and plus too, there's different things that going on at different people's lives at the time. So I'm fully aware of that. But there's been times where the relationship played out with me and mentors. Like, I've had some people that it didn't start off as me trying to quote unquote be a mentor, but they just respected me so much to where, like, it's people that I've been connected to for right now 17, 18 years that still seek me out. When I was young staff sergeant shepherd, and maybe it was an E2 and a PFC, and they'll like reach out to me now. It was like, hey, blase, hey, what do you think about this? Hey, and just being able to bounce stuff off me. So there's been the overwhelming majority of mine has been relationships has been long-term. Some have been temporary, which is good, right? And then I would say this, some mentors I've gotten not from a relationship perspective, but I got mentored by seeing them doing things that I was like, I'm not going to do it that way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. You can learn what to do. You can also learn what not to do.
Yes. And I consider them mentors because the greatest lessons that we learn are most of the time through significant emotional events. And with those significant emotional events, just like you said, there's a lot of lessons learned. Like, oh, I'm not doing that like that, and also realizing, and this just came to me, one of the most powerful things you can do in a mentor and a mentee relationship is getting a good understanding of who you are and understanding what your capabilities are, what you're capable of doing, and what your limitations are. And I bring that up because if you are more self-aware of what you can and can't do, that will help you align yourself to the others with certain strengths, and a mentor and mentee relationship doesn't always have to be a higher and a lower. You can have parallel mentees. You can have people on that doing the same job that you're doing or at the same level that you're at that you can learn from. And I've just always felt like maximizing that opportunity.
Yeah, you spoke to a lot about, different mentors. Were they all at the same time or different times? Would you have multiple mentors that do different things for you in different aspects of your life?
Yeah, they were like I said earlier, Eric, I've had them spread throughout, and I had multiple at one time, but it just really depends on what I'm looking for in that individual. So, for example, I have a classmate right now, one guy that I graduated high school with. He's in real estate right now. He's a real estate investor down in Atlanta and doing very well. It's another one I went to Bolick with. He's into real estate investment, but on like a macro level. Like he has a company that owns like 2,500 units. And, like those are my peers, but I can be mentored by them in that space. So like, I always ask questions or I follow them on social media and see what they're doing so I can pick up certain tidbits and different things like that. And that's what I call leveraging it. And finding those and seeking those out in areas that like you can improve on. And that dynamic is a good one because because a lot of time when we talk about mentor, and I know you said like mentor access, and you said being access to mentor. It's not just, like a generational thing. Like you got to connect with the next generation or somebody older than you for you to learn from. No, you go to the people that actually have the knowledge that you're seeking. And it's not just like in your job, but like even as a husband or even as a father, you see somebody that you perceive like, dang, man, they seem like they got it together. Then you just ask them a question. Hey, what about this? And then what you'll find out in those relationships is you'll find out that perception can be there, but they just learn certain things. Perception may be that they're doing an exceptional job at something, right? But when you talk to them, you just realize that their perspective is different on certain things, and then they just approach it differently. And you realize that you aren't the only one that's because a lot of times, and what I've learned in my mentorship and mentee is a lot of times I felt like I was isolated and that I was the only one going through this, that I was the only one having this experience. And by talking to mentors, I started to realize that I wasn't the only one. Like, and it's not as bad as I'm catastrophizing it to be. And if I just make these small things, it helps. It just helps, and it's a shift. And that's why I value that aspect and seeking those different people out.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So once you transitioned over to the officer side, how was that? Was that everything that you wanted it to be?
So
what was your expectation actually? Start.
So, I really didn't have like a different expectation as in something being different because, just like I know, Eric, is the Army is a culture in of its own. And then you have different subcultures based off of what job you have. Field artillery got a different subcultures than logistics, then infantry, then MPs, then combat engineers. They have a subculture. So my expectation was to go in and be an engaging leader. But I thank God for wisdom because I didn't commission and stay in the same field that I was enlisted in. So I was in communication or signal enlisted, but when I commissioned in quartermaster, which is logistics. And the reason why I did that was I wanted to be forced to be the student, which would force me to be humble, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does.
Because because I recognize I have been doing that I've been doing signal as enlisted, that I've done everything from a soldier all the way up to a platoon sergeant level. So me going in, if I stayed signal, going in as a platoon leader, when I got all of that information and knowledge of how to, what would somebody be able to tell me? You said, I know everything. Well, when I went quartermaster, I didn't know anything, and it forced me to like seek people out. It forced me to find mentors, and it forced me to not rest on my laurels, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That actually not a lot of people would do that. That's actually really impressive that you were willing to take that step back in order so that you wouldn't be arrogant. Is that something that you constantly think about? It's like, how do I maintain a level of humility in my leadership and things of that nature?
Yes. And the reason why is leadership is people business, man. People business. So I would say this, right? Through our conversations that was initiated 7 years ago, just think about it, 7 years ago, it made an impression on you enough so that, you know, we can still stay connected. You reached out to me just based off our interactions. If our interaction was anything different, it was like, man, I'm not messing with that guy, man. Like, no, I'm not even gonna waste my time. And I'm very cognitive of that, of how you treat people. People remember how you treat them, not anything else. Like they genuinely remember how you treat them. And you know, that's just like balancing in leadership. There's sometimes as a leader, you got to hold people accountable. There's accountability with that, but I can still hold you accountable and be respectful and respecting you as an individual. And that's something that I really, that's a direct focus of mine.
Yeah. So like on a day-to-day basis, for your job, what do you do, and how does leadership and those relationships matter in your day-to-day?
So my day-to-day job, like I said before, I'm a support operations officer. So for people that don't know, I equate it to, I'm responsible for synchronizing and coordinating all logistics support throughout the 10th Mountain Division, which is a light infantry division that's up at Fort Drum in northern New York, that has approximately 24,000 soldiers. So if you think about being responsible for the coordination and synchronizing of logistics operations, to include supply chain management, to include transportation and distribution, to include ammunition management, to include personnel support, to include contracting, to include maintenance. All of those fall up under my purview as far as being responsible for the synchronizing 6 different brigades. And you know, just like what I'm saying with that is that synchronization can be challenging, right? And you mentioned about relationships. I personally don't control any of that. I'm just a conduit in between to synchronize. So those relationships, building those relationships, people seeing who you are, that, you know, valuing how you make them feel, help enable or help increase the efficiencies of what I do through building those relationships. And imagine being held accountable for something you're not directly responsible for. So how do you exert your influence? Because I don't have the power of authority power over them. I have to operate in the influence power with them to be able to facilitate the job that I do.
Yeah, to sort of clarify, it's because it's the commanders, right? There's commanders who actually have that command authority. And then what Robert is doing is he's a staff position who's doing a lot of the coordination on behalf of the commander. But when he's coordinating, he doesn't have authority over all of his subordinate units. So he has to go through his personal influence relationships with all of those subordinate staff members or even the commanders themselves. Even though he doesn't have command authority, he still needs to get things done on behalf of his commander, but using his influence to sort of lead even people higher than him in a way.
So in prime example of that is yesterday I had to make a phone call to a fellow peer that I work with, and like, hey man, I need your help on this. And because of the relationship that was built, right, he was like, yeah, I can do that for you. Because he understands if he needed, I would return the favor for him. So that's what you're saying, that power influence. I have to operate in there, and it's not easy, and it's most of the time very frustrating. But you build those relationships, and part of how having a mindset of treating everybody really equally with respect goes a long way. It does.
I think a lot of people don't know how the military operates. So when they talk about logistics, is it really similar to the civilian sector? And I also heard that you said you work with contracting. Does that mean that you're working with like outside government agencies? Like what type of contracting did you mean?
So with first I address the contracting, then I get into the logistics part. But contracting is basically I have a section that's under me that we draft statements of work, or we draft proposed requirements for certain contracting support that we may need to support us. And that can be through anything, through getting electric forklifts with a maintenance service packet to it, or, contracting, a service that we may need as far as with getting your clothes washed or something like that. It can be a mirror of different things. So that's the contractor side. And only thing for my section, we still use we have, people that writing contracts is their jobs. We just do identify all of the requirements for that. Now with logistics, I just want people to think about logistics in the Army is very similar to logistics in the civilian sector. We use a database called G-Army, which is equivalent to what like Walmart or Target use. So at the same point, like we have warehouses that we manage, which equivalent to like a Walmart, Amazon. They have the warehouse with all of the stuff in there. You go online and you order it, and it sends a message that this needs to be delivered. Where in the Army, we have the same thing where we can go in and we order things through what we call NSN, a national stock number, to where, just imagine like a barcode on an item that you have. You order it, the part will come in, the item will come into our supply support activity, our warehouse, and then, but it will come in through a lot of different things. Most of the time it's brought in from a civilian side, big trucks, whatever like that. Once they bring it in, what we do then is now we get it down to whoever order it, and they'll come to the warehouse, pick it up, and then they'll go back and, process it. Now, I don't want to sound, I don't want to confuse people. Just think about this. As you order something at Walmart and you scan through the self-checkout and you buy your stuff, that sends a message back to the warehouse of what number they need to be restocked and refilled and replenished. In the warehouse would then package all of that up, put it on pallets, and then have coordinate a truck to come pick it up to take it to that. That kind of synchronization is like what we do in the Army, but we add a little bit more. We add ammunition to that. We add a lot of life support things that on the civilian side, people probably wouldn't think about, but we have to focus on food. How do we get food? How food's going to be cooked? We have to coordinate all the other different classes of supplies, to include medical supplies, to include construction materials, to include anything that you can think of, we deal with. And we just deal with it to where we can be in an austere environment and operate with it.
Hey, Robert, so within the military, it sounds like you've had different roles, and that's actually what I think makes it really fascinating, is that you can have these different jobs, different responsibilities throughout your career within the same organization. Would you mind telling us a little bit about some of your other roles, like 31R? What was your life like when you were doing that? And then maybe if there's anything else that you did kind of in between, just to let people see a variety.
Yes. So as a 31 Romeo, and I said R because I didn't know the phonetic alphabets at the time, but we got very familiar with 31 Romeo. My job basically was, I did a lot of line of sight. When we mean line of sight, basically we had antennas, right? That we will have antennas and do a direct line of sight to another antenna with a radio, and that's how we stay connected. When I joined the military, it was called Mobile Subscriber Equipment, MSC. and that was the design where we had multiple signal nodes that was connected through those antennas. Now the radio, the capability of those radios was like 25 miles. So basically you had the range of 25 miles where you can connect in between with other radios. And that's how we stay connected from a communication standpoint. Well, now from a signal side, it's involved heavily to satellite. So a lot of those line of sights are going away and it's satellite. So you have a broader number of distance that you can cover then. My job then was very, I would say, like low level. I didn't have a lot of responsibility. I just had to pretty much do my job, like do the low level stuff that people don't like doing. Like I didn't come in the Army as an officer. I came in the Army as an E1, the lowest rank that you can go. So I've been on duty. I've been a custodial engineer. I've cleaned up. I've mopped. I've swept. I've been on those details that I've cut grass. I picked grass up out of rocks. I've done what we say the lowest level stuff. And I would say really during that time, I had the most fun ever because I didn't have I wasn't responsible for nobody but myself. But as I began to grow up in the ranks, now I'm responsible for the health and welfare and the well-being of individuals under me. So as a team chief, I had 3 people under me. And as a section sergeant, I had 15 people under me. And then you go to being a platoon sergeant, having, 60 people under you that you're responsible for. And then now when I commission, I'm grateful for the one of the reasons why, and I had to preface this, one of the reasons why I picked quartermaster as my branch is because once you go to captain's career course, quartermaster branch, transportation branch, and ordnance branch all merged to become logistics branch. So I was thinking about the marketability of me after I leave the military with having that experience, because logistics, I'm telling you, that's where some jobs at. People don't think, it's very nice. So that's why I picked it. But I was able to be so diverse, and I'm thankful for me going to where I went to, because Eric, in 3 years in Germany, I'm going to tell you all of the jobs that I had, and you're going to be like, wow. I was a water purification and distribution platoon leader. So I don't know if everybody know what that is. And this is a comedic reference that is not entirely accurate, but the equipment was. Have you ever seen the movie In the Army Now? With
yeah.
Yeah. I can't Paulie.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. So that was kind of like a funny
Shore?
movie, but
Yeah.
Paulie Shore. Yeah, Paulie Shore.
Yep.
He did the movie In the Army Now, and they had the ROPUs, the water purification units, the 600, so the reverse osmosis water purification unit. So I was in I was a water platoon leader, and with that, we purified drinking water. So we got the capabilities of going up to a water source, a river, a pond, or whatever, draw the water out, purify it to make it potable or drinkable water. So that was my first job as an officer. Then I went and became a executive officer for a company, for an ammunition company. And they processed a lot of the ammunitions. They ran the ammo supply point. They supported that. Then I went to my battalion to be the battalion transportation and area delivery officer. So within the first few years, I had those experiences. And then I had the privilege of being a rear detachment commander for a supply company that was there for a year. So I had all of those experiences in 3.5 years, which gave me a perspective of being more well-rounded as a logistician, because after career course, I went to a support battalion in Korea. That's where I met Eric in an artillery brigade, who had a completely different equipment that I ever had to deal with. So from a munitions perspective, there was the multi-launch rocket systems, the MLRS, which is a completely different support requirement than anything else. So that's why I like logistics, because it forced me to always be learning and just going through all of those different stages from being the 31 Romeo up to now. a lot of those translated because I just keep the same lessons learned, even when I enlisted up to now. And the big thing about it is, just being yourself and being just a decent person goes a long way. It does.
I think what's super interesting about the Army that I think civilians, when they're looking at it, is the amount of jobs that you talked about all happen within 3 years. And most people's careers, they don't change that much in 3 years. What do you think about that type of progression, that type of change? Is it stressful? Is it enjoyable? Like, what are your thoughts on it?
So yes, definitely it is stressful, but not stressful on the level where I think if you haven't experienced it, it can be overwhelming, right? It's stressful on the fact where if you want to be specialized and just spend a whole bunch of time doing one thing, then, that can be stressful. But for me, honestly, and I think that, as I, get on the horizon of transitioning out, retiring from the military is, to me, I guess because I'm conditioned to it, the change and the adjustment is not as bad for me. I actually look forward to it. I like it because I'm always learning something new. And just for me, like, if I see something, before I asked you about the platform, before we started the show, like let me look that up. And I wrote a note down just to go, like, that's just how I am. Right. But, it is stressful because you just have to learn new stuff. But my mindset with that is I embrace that. Because for me, if I had to do the same thing for 5 years and that's all I do, like for me, because I'm not conditioned that way, it's like that's stressful to me.
I agree with you. I think it's a different pace out in the civilian world once you get over here. So
I was talking about go ahead, Andrew.
I was just going to ask you about, educational requirements. When you were enlisting, you talked about the ASVAB, and then going into the officer side, what types of things did you have to do? You talked a little bit about the credits, but what if you weren't going through green to gold? Are there other opportunities or options to get in?
Yes, they are. So one thing with the ASVAB, right, they give you a score, and I would just say the golden score that you want to get is 110 on your ASVAB. And the reason why you want to get a 110 on your ASVAB is, if you're trying to go officer and different things like that, or you're trying to go warrant officer, a lot of opportunities, that's the minimum score that they want people to have to transition over. And as far as with schooling, I took advantage of the opportunities that the Army gave me to go to school. Like they have the GI Bill and those different things, tuition assistance. And I would just go to school at night, or doing hybrid classes, doing 2 days out of the week and doing the rest online. I just made that decision to get after that. As far as with being an officer, it is a requirement that you have a bachelor's degree. And, I know that during the surge, they kind of didn't do that. They kind of say, hey, you had to complete your degree about the time you made a captain. And but they once the surge, the numbers went, then the demand for the numbers went down. They went back to you having to have a full degree. As far as being able to, get after it, it's a lot of different options. And I think that, you can pursue schooling yourself. You can do, and it's just anything. This is like if you're working in a civilian job and you want to improve your education, you got to balance that and find out what you can do. But in the Army, they just have a lot of programs, man. They have a program that hip pocket commission, and what that hip pocket is, a division level commander can select 2 soldiers to be direct commission, and then they have to go through that. So those are other options as well. They have the authority to do that. You still have to go and, complete certain requirements, but the division commander, usually the individual is recommended, and then they can decide on, I will sign off on this soldier, get an opportunity to commission. And I've known a few people that got that opportunity.
Hey, Robert, when you're studying for your associates, your bachelor's, are there certain fields or like majors that you should focus on, or as long as you have that degree, it's valid in helping you get to that next step? Yeah,
in the military, the Army don't care if you get a degree in can opening, as long as you complete as long as you complete your degree. I got my degree, my bachelor's degree in psychology. That's because that was something that very interests me. I'm always curious about the why and understanding the why of people, because that gives you perspective. It really does. And I've just carried some of the lessons learned. Not saying like, because I got a bachelor's in psychology that makes me, Freud. No, I'm not saying that. But what it does is, like I talked about earlier about organization psychology, right? That was one of my classes that I took towards my bachelor's degree. And when I took that class, I was like, dude, I understood this dynamic when I was working at Piggly Wiggly. And it helps. No, I'm just saying, and that's what it really helped kind of realize like, oh, okay, got it. And I took psychology just to help understand the why, and then help understand the science of how they get to understanding as far as how they conduct their studies and their research. But it really helped me because you understand people, and the Army is a people business. And I think even on the civilian side, I think we forget that it's about the people. And that's what that's what motivated me. But to answer your question back again, the Army just wanted a completed degree. Now, I've known people who gotten, a finance degree and they go finance, but I also known people who got specific degrees and doing something completely different.
You also had opportunities to go to school while you were in the Army too, right? I saw, and this is just because I was in, I saw that you had a degree from Webster University. Did part of the credits come from Captain's Career Course, right?
Yes. So Webster, and another opportunity, Webster gave me 15 credits towards my master's degree because I completed Captain's Career Course. And I'm glad that you brought it up because I go back to my bachelor's degree. Troy University, I got my bachelor's from Troy. Troy University is very military friendly in the aspect of they give you credits according to they give you credits for your training, your military training. So for my bachelor's degree, I've got almost a year worth of college credits for my military training. So that's why I say that's one of the great things about, military is there's a lot of opportunities out there. You just have to be willing to do the work and find out what it is to help you. And I think a lot of people don't know that, and they expect a lot of things to be kind of laid out on the red carpet, but man, ask those questions. And I've always been I got the mindset of find a way to yes. Like it's just how, like, okay, if I go to this house and this door is locked, I'm not just going to go to that first door. I'm going to walk around to see if the back door locked. I'm going to walk around to see if somebody in there before I leave. And that's just my mindset.
Do you need a master's degree as you were going up the ranks on the officer side?
You don't need a master's degree to get promoted, but that is a consideration that they look at for promotion, if that makes sense. And then there's different opportunities that you can get other degrees, like right now going through the Command General and Staff College, which I went through year before last from 2020 to 2021. They have it to where when you graduate, you can get a military, you can get a master's degree from there just through the curriculum that they have there. So they have different opportunities for you to do. You can also get another degree through the War College at all the different War Colleges. So they have different places where you can get degrees from. It is not a requirement for promotion, but it's definitely, if it comes down to you and somebody else and both of y'all records look the same and you have a master's degree and they don't, or vice versa, that can be a discriminator, but it's not a requirement. And I hope I don't want people to think that you have to, or they will look at you bad, because you get promoted in the Army based off of your performance and your potential, not based off of how many degrees that you have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then going through like educational stuff, I think this is something very different than the civilian world, which is, can you walk us through a little bit about, all the professional development courses, like from the enlisted side, I think I don't even know what they're calling it, like BLC, ALC.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're even the same names. And then on the officer side, the BOLIC, Captain's Career Course, and things like that.
So the Army have what you call institutional training, right? And those institutional training are called professional military education, PME schools. So on the enlisted side, you have basic leaders course, which is when I went through, it was called primary development leadership course. So PLDC, but that changed from PLDC, the warrior leaders course, to now basic leader course. So BLC is the initial one that enlisted soldiers go to. ALC, which is the advanced leaders course, which is the secondary level. So BLC is required for you to make sergeant, E5. ALC is required for you to make staff sergeant. SLC, senior leaders course, is requirement for you to make sergeant first class. And then MLC, master's leader course, is a requirement for you to make E8, master sergeants. So those, and then for sergeants majors, they have the Sergeant's Major Academy. So they have all of those different schools that are there to provide professional development, to go over doctrine, to go over leadership, to go over a lot of different things. And they're structured in that way where that is mandatory training for the personnel. We just had a graduation yesterday here on Fort Drum for BLC, basically the course. And with about, it was 90 soldiers that graduated at that course. So, that's the first step for them. On the officer side, you have basic officer leadership course, BOLIC. That's the initial training that officers go to out of for leadership training out of once they commission. And then you have Captain's Career Course. That's the course for captains to go to. And most of those is like right after you get promoted to captain, your third or fourth year, you go to that school. That's another course where they have some common core things where everybody get taught across the Army. And then they go into your specific branch and they talk about, those different leadership things and the job skills that you need for your branch. Then you have the Command General Staff College, which is you can either go a resident select, which I was selected to go in person. That's at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, which is the premier military officer training school, to where we have multiple international personnel attend every year and most of the people that come to CGSC end up being like the chief of staff or the top general in the country and other countries. So they send their best of the best to that school. You can do that either resident. They got a hybrid thing now where you can do some resident, some online, and then they have a all online non-resident course. And then for colonel, they have War College, Army War College. They have the Air Force and the Navy War College. They have different war colleges you can go to, and they partner with different universities. I know University of Texas has a fellowship where you can literally go take the equivalent and do a fellow at certain schools and get credit for War College. So those are the professional development PME schools that the Army offer for leadership development. And I would tell you, man, those are some phenomenal schools. Like they are. And I know why you're in it. It kind of seemed like Groundhog Day because Eric, like you and it's like, man, here we go again. But you get a lot of structure in there. where that easily translate to the civilian side.
Actually, I brought it up because I always enjoyed going to those schools because it felt like it was taking a step back. Like I got to rest, because I'm not working during those periods of time. Those were dedicated periods of my life where they were just going to teach me again. So it was almost like iterative, like, oh, okay, I get to take a break, learn some things, and then go back into the force.
I put this in perspective. I've been in the Army 22 years, and I did the math the other day. Roughly 10% of my career, like 26 months of the 22 years that I've been in BOLIC, Captain's Career Course, Command General Staff College, BLC, ALC, and other schools. But I've spent 10% of my career, 20 plus career, has been in school for professional development, leadership training, and further advancements of my skills. So the Army does a phenomenal job as far as with investing into the professional development of their personnel.
Yeah, and just to clarify, you get paid the whole time during that period.
all of that time I got paid for it and goes towards my retirement. So
yeah, it's a great program, I think. If you were to start over, was there any changes that you would have done to your career? Like would you have gone to the officer side earlier? Do you think that there's any mistakes that you regret?
So if I had to do it over, I definitely would have went officer first. That's just looking at it. But no, I mean, as I think back on it, there are some lessons learned that I'll say this. I would have went officer earlier than I would say first. I would have went it earlier. I wouldn't have waited until I was at my 10-year mark. I would have done it around about the 5-6 year mark.
Okay.
And I just look at that just from, I just had a birthday on Monday, on Tuesday, I turned 43, right? So I'm literally all of the brigade commanders now, those that are brigade command, like we all graduated high school at the same time. And just the timeline looking at it, I would have did it earlier. But for experience wise, I would have did it the same way that I've done it. There's really no regrets. There's no regrets, man. No regrets in that regard at all.
Do you think there's a certain personality type that would prefer to be an officer? Because now, in a way, like you imply, like, hey, I wanted to be an officer, right? But there's people that I met that, they never want to be the officer side. They always want to be on the enlisted side. What's the difference kind of personality wise or mentality that sort of distinguishes who might prefer what side?
So I would just say this. I wrote an article that I still hadn't published yet, but I sent it to you. And the topic of it is From Sergeant to Sir, right? Mm-hmm. And talk about how you have to be deliberate in your approach to transitioning from being a non-commissioned officer, enlisted personnel, to being an officer. It's not that you change who you are. It's just your roles are different roles. So I equate this to, let's just take something everybody can relate to, McDonald's, right? Right. There's a difference between being a supervisor and being a manager. And that's the difference what I will equate enlisted to officer. So on the supervisor probably knows, just through experience, knows any and everything about working at McDonald's. They know how to drop fries. They know how to cook. They know how to run the front counter. They know about how to cook. They know all the intricacies that's there. But the manager is the one that's overall held responsible, and they're responsible for payroll. They're responsible for ordering food, the inventory. They're responsible for hiring and firing people. That level of responsibility falls on them. the manager may not know all of the details of how to do everything that the supervisor may know, but that manager is responsible for, have a higher level of responsibility. And that's the difference that I would equate from being enlisted to an officer. And that mindset is, some people don't want to have that level of responsibility. They just want to do the job. And like that's equate to some of the people that you talked about earlier. And then there's some that wouldn't mind embracing it and taking on that responsibility. But the challenge is this, and that's why I wrote the article about from sergeant to sir. You can't do both. You can't do both. Effectively, you can't do both. And you have to be deliberate about separating those, not allowing those lines to blur. You got to be deliberate about separating those lines. And that's why I wrote the article, because I had to be deliberate, man, about, and that's one of the reasons, Eric, that I didn't go back to stand signal when I commissioned.
That makes sense.
Because those lines would have been blurred. Oh, I know what to do. I know how to go set that radio up. I know how to put that antenna up. I know how to troubleshoot this. Hey, y'all don't, and then I can take myself out to now I need to manage, and my focus don't need to be bringing a shot in. My focus need to be focused on how do we tie into the network? What support do these people need? You see what I'm saying? And that's just the difference.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think I learned that lesson one time when I was a basic training XO, and I was picking up I was a baby lieutenant at the time, didn't know anything. I picked up a water can, and the commander yelled at me. I was like, drop it. What are you doing? And I was like, well, I'm just going to help. Like, everyone's bringing water cans. He's like, no. Come over here. He was like, if we're all getting shot at, I don't need you as an officer to be worried about these like minutia. He's like, you need to be in the fight. So he's like, learn how to delegate, learn how to be responsible for and be aware of the bigger situation. So yeah, I completely understand where you're kind of coming from with that. But do you think that everyone has the ability to make that transition or not?
No.
Some people are just, okay.
No, man. I would say a lot of people who transition from green to gold, they crash out at captain. Like, there'll be phenomenal lieutenants because pretty much they're just a platoon sergeant with a butter bomb. Like, they're getting after it, right? But you have to be deliberate about making that transition. And one of the greatest, I would say, cinematic scenes that depict that responsibility is you watch the movie We Were Soldiers with Mel Gibson, in the scene when they are in the valley and everything is going crazy. Sergeant Major's making sure that the bullets are getting away he at, and to free the commander up to focus on making command decisions for the bigger fight. And that is not easy, though, man. It's not easy when you are a person and naturally you weren't trying to act as if you're better than. You was like, I can go pick up that water can. I wasn't thinking about it from that perspective. Like, I'm just helping out. Everybody else is good. I'm just doing what a natural impulse to do. But where is your role? You see what I'm saying? And then that's embracing that role is what's critical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If there's someone who's interested or lost in life, what would you say about your career and then, getting into the profession of the Army, maybe specifically in logistics? And if not, you could also talk a little bit about, just the Army in general. Like, what do you think are the benefits of going this direction?
So I would say personally, I'm a huge advocate for the military. And the reason why I'm a huge advocate for the military is the military is a space to where you can figure yourself out in a structured environment, and in a stable and structured environment. And what I mean by that is, it really, first of all, I acknowledge that the military is not for everybody, right? But I think, and this is going to sound kind of crazy, but I think the military is not for everybody, but I think everybody should be for the military. And the reason why I say that is, going into the military, you get the stability of you're always going to have somewhere to sleep, eat, and stay, and you're always going to have a consistent form of income coming in. So if you are a person that you may not be used to that, and you come from a background where you just don't have that level of stability, it's a place where you can kind of get in and kind of find yourself a little bit and acclimate to being accustomed to that coming in. It's also a place where there's a lot of different opportunities that you can use. I joined the Army with 6 college credits that I could transfer. 6, right? But I was able to use all the different programs, being able to use tuition assistance, being able to use my GI Bill to just go to school and didn't have to pay for it out of my pocket. So I was able to kind of find myself with that. Also, too, I'm a big, huge advocate for the militaries, because if you're coming from a place where you're trying to find yourself, it is a lot easier to find yourself when you're surrounded in a diverse organization, very diverse organization. That most of the education will come just for being around people and learning about people and their backgrounds. Eric, you're from the suburbs of Chicago, correct?
Yep. Yeah.
Andrew, where you from?
I'm from a small town in West Michigan.
Okay. Small town in West Michigan, suburbs in Chicago. I'm from a small town, and I guarantee you the town where I lived at, it's, Sawyerville, Alabama. That's where I lived at. My graduating high school class was 84 people, and we was the largest high school in the county, right? Where I lived at in Sawyerville, still to this day, what we have in Sawyerville is a blinking caution light that they put up the year before I graduated in 1997, a country store, a volunteer fire department, and a post office, which is about the size of a living room and a dining room together, right? Population is about 350 people. It's so small, it's barely on the state map. Our police department is the sheriff department, because we don't have police, like a police force, right? So, but I say all of that to where I was able to connect with you from the suburbs of Chicago, completely different experience, right? I can say, I think me and Andrew can kind of relate a little bit with the small town dynamic, but he's a small town in Michigan. I'm small town in Alabama. We used to go hang out at the parking lot of the grocery store just to chill out there, just to meet up with friends. We used to ride bikes everywhere. And I say all of that because joining the military, you'll realize that I could learn something from you being from the suburbs. I can connect and see all of our differences and learn from it, but also see how we all share a lot of common interests. And I realized that we're not as different as what we see in media and all this stuff. We're not that much different than we think. So if somebody's looking to join the military, that's what that did for me. And that's what I embrace. And it's so many different opportunities, man, that they have out there. So many different programs. I've had friends who the Army paid for them to get their law degree. I have friends who the Army paid to put them through PA school. And they, from an enlisted personnel, like I've had, and then you get commissioned, right? And you get to go to a PA school where you can get your master's degree. They got so many different programs that people could use. And if people want to use that, I recommend, I'm an advocate for the military, but I also realize the military is not for everybody. With that being said, if you come in and serve honorably, it can benefit you for the rest of your life. And I don't think people think about that.
Yeah. The other thing that I think I recall earlier in this interview, you were saying that you had peers that were investing in real estate and things like that. So, and I know that you have your own projects. So a lot of times I think when people think, oh, I joined the Army, I'm kind of stuck in just doing Army things. Like, how much flexibility do you have to do other things in your life? And kind of have that space and time, right? You have the stability and then maybe to build something while you're there.
Man, so I'm gonna go down the laundry list of stuff that I do, right? So I am a recording artist. So I have music out there. I'm a Christian hip hop artist. I've also written 9 Army themed songs that cover topics of sexual harassment, suicide awareness, resiliency, safety. I've even done a rap song for the 10th Mountain Division where they play it doing in processing for every soldier coming here. I have my own podcast that I do every Saturday. I do it. Got another episode tonight called The Conversation 9-8. I also host another show, the Black Belt Experience, which deals with, I'm from the region in Alabama where they call the Black Belt. And we talk about different topics throughout that area, mostly concerned with just empowering and informing the people of just making things better and holding our elected officials accountable for making our community better. I do a lot of volunteer work. I support, it's so much that you can do outside of the military. I know I got people that run multiple businesses that's still in the military, people that do investments, people that do a lot of different things in the military. So you're not just pigeonholed to just do it. It's a job, but also I would say there's a life outside of that if you choose to do it, because there's some that don't. And that's on them. That's not that the Army is making you do that. That's on them. They choose to do that.
Hey, Robert, when people are choosing, when you say choosing to go into the military, where would you suggest that they kind of do their research? It's not as simple as do I sign up or not, right? Is there other information that they should be looking about? What part of the military should I go in? What things should I be thinking about when I get there?
Yes. So I would say, when you're talking about doing research, first of all, I recommend what you're interested in, right? And and I would say this too, though, how you score on the ASVAB will determine how many options you may have to pick the job that you want. So that's a key thing. But research the job. Like the Army got a lot of information. Like if you just Google, hey, I want Army jobs, and they got a website. I can't recall it right now, but it's a website that come up, and it goes into each MOS, military occupational specialty, what's job, and there's over 200 that the Army have to offer, and they got videos that kind of tell you what they do, right? The other thing I would say do is talk to credible sources about the military. And really, when I mean credible is, if you're a young person and, talk to people who've been in it for a while. Don't talk to your friends who just got a bad attitude and wanted to get out the military, because they're going to give you skewed information, right? Talk to people about people that been in it for a while and got some credibility, and they can tell you. Just like I said, the Army is not for everybody, right? But that doesn't mean that you can't honorably serve your time and transition and move on. And like I mentioned earlier, and this is why I tell it, and I had the privilege of being in my second command, being an AIT commander. And I used to tell soldiers this all the time. They'd be like, "Oh, sir, I'm ready to, I want, the Army ain't for me." And I'm like, dude, you've been in the Army 3 months. How, you're 18 years old. Like, how do you really know what's not for you when you haven't even given it a chance? "Oh, sir, I just can't do it no more. I want to get out." I'm like, I said, I know you're not thinking about it right now, but I said, you finishing this time and just getting out honorably, the 40-year-old is going to thank you for you making that decision. Not the 18, 19-year-old, but the 40-year-old will thank you. And why I bring that up, both of my grandfathers fought, my paternal grandfather fought in World War II, my maternal grandfather fought in the Korean War. They benefited from being drafted during a time where it was segregation. Like, it wasn't easy for an African-American male to serve in the military. My paternal grandfather he served in the port in the Philippines on a port company because they wouldn't allow them to serve in combat arms. And if you understand history, the Red Ball Express, there's a lot of African Americans that was part of the Red Ball Express driving trucks because that's all they was allowed to do, be cooks, clean, quartermasters, and those things. But the demand for needing a few to be moved, they were able to get in the fight. You transition over to my maternal grandfather. He was part of the first integrated class at Camp Jackson back in 1950 when he got drafted for the Korean War. Why is that significant? I'm not talking about the race thing. I'm talking about their decision to honorably serve, did their 2 years and got out. My grandfather, my maternal grandfather, was able to go to college on the GI Bill. In the 1950s, in Alabama, at Alabama A&M, my grandfather was able to go to college from the GI Bill. He also paid the way through for his best friend to go to college the first 2 years. My grandfather and my grandmother met at Alabama A&M University because my grandmother, her family sold a cow every year to pay for her to go to school. So those benefits impacted their lives, and I was able to benefit from those benefits. And that's why I try to communicate to people about, hey, just maximizing this opportunity. Look what the opportunity that it can give you. And that's why I say talk to a credible source, because you talk to somebody bitter that don't know, they're going to give you a excuse. Oh, I don't like the Army because this, that, and the third. And you just ask yourself, is that everybody experience? Because just like everything else, everybody's not going to have the same experience you have, but don't just trust one source to allow that to determine an opportunity, to discourage you from an opportunity that you consider it.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess moving into the future a little bit, some of the people watching this, they may be in junior high school, what do you think the prospect, do you think that the military is going to change very much? How is it going to change, if there's going to be any? Maybe the types of jobs that are available, right? Like more technology based, like do we need infantry? Like, are we going to have robots doing fighting? Right? What do you think the future might look like, and how could that benefit them, and what could they do to prepare for it?
So I would just use it. That's a real good question, Eric. So I joined the Army in 2000, right? And like I said, we started off in Signal. I mentioned earlier about the mobile subscriber equipment. That was a 1970s era technology that was rapidly accelerated to satellite communications due to the war on terror. Structurally, I don't see the Army changing a lot structurally, but I do see the use and the implementation of a lot more technology coming up in the future. Even if you look at what's going on in Ukraine right now, they're using drones. They're using a lot of different technology. They're leveraging social media they're weaponizing that as a tool. So the Army has established a new, cyber, Army Cyber, which is Cyber Center of Excellence is at Fort Gordon. They got different cyber jobs where they're weaponizing the use of the internet, like a lot of other, like Russia's been doing, like a lot of other places have been doing. So definitely a lot more technical jobs I do see. A lot more use of robotics. And if that's something that you're into, I would say, we use drones right now. We fly, we got people that's sitting in a location in the States flying drones overseas, and doing kinetic activities with it. It's endless amounts as far as with the changing. I do see a lot more technical focused jobs coming into play. So if you're looking at it and that's something that's interesting to you, I would definitely look into it, like definitely. And a lot of these certifications and technical certification that you get in training translate over to the civilian sector very well.
Yeah, no, that's great. Is there? I think we've taken a lot of your time already, Robert.
Yeah.
So is there any other things that we haven't talked about that you would like to inform our audience about?
Yes, I want to hit on the dynamic of balance, right? Balance in the military, because I think, and this is this correlated to civilian life as well. Any career that you have to be, especially with a family. If you having family and different things, I highly recommend that you find your balance, find your sweet spot on how do you balance the demand of your job versus balancing the priorities and the demands of family life, and also balancing yourself and your self-interest. I say it's a dangerous place when you get imbalanced in those areas. And for me, it's the military is a job that has a particular lifestyle associated with it, but it is not my life, if that makes sense. And I think that's why that's the thing that I would say, just find that, because a lot of people can miss that because they can be so dedicated to their job and want to be a good thing on their job where they're burning themselves out. They're wearing themselves out. They're imbalanced with their kids, imbalanced with their family, which cause a lot more contention than need be. But I would say just find that balance, find that sweet spot, and don't forget about you. Don't forget about yourself and your interests and your self-interest, because the job will always be there. The job will always ask for more. It doesn't matter with that, but prioritize those things. Don't be that person that you accomplish great things on your job, but you fail in developing those relationships with your family, because that time goes by fast. And being a father of 4 kids with 3 of them out of the house already, you realize that how much time you don't have, versus how much time you do have. And I had the privilege of having my mom live with me for the last year. She moved up with me. She retired and moved up with me to Fort Drum. But with that being said, I just turned 43, and I've been out of my parents' house for 25 years longer. I've been out of my parents' house for 25 years, longer than the 18 years that I was in there. And the reason why I bring that up is time go by fast. Enjoy it while it's there. Maximize each moment and make sure you have balance. That's the thing I would leave everybody with.
Yeah, that's great advice. And with that, I think we're going to close a little bit. Where could they find you? Is there anything that you'd like to talk about with your programs? Because I know if you want to listen to that type of motivational and also the advice, you can find it with all the stuff that you do, right, Robert?
Yes. So you can find me. I'm on social media. So if you go to on Facebook, have my own personal page, Robert Shepherd, but I also have the Conversation 98 is my my social media page for my podcast. And then I'm also on Instagram, the Conversation 98, and TikTok, the Conversation _98. And then I'm also on YouTube as well, where I post my podcast, the full podcast, as well as reels from the podcast at the Conversation 98 YouTube channel. And that's what I do. And then on my artist side, I'm Proverbs. So Proverbs to music. If you go to on Instagram, I'm on there. Also Proverbs, the number 2 music together. I'm on Facebook as well. And then you can find me on Amazon and Amazon, iTunes, all of that for my latest project that I released last year called The Conversation, Proverbs, The Conversation. So as y'all see, the theme with the conversation is there because I feel conversations are very necessary, and it's just simple, just having dialogue.
Yeah, we really appreciate all the time that you just gave us. And I think everything that you said was super helpful, especially with the military and also just personal advice. I'm thinking about some of the things that you said. So really appreciate you having you here, Robert.
Thank you, Robert.
No, thank you. I very well appreciate the opportunity, and I really appreciate the time of being able to do this. It was an honor.
Hey, thanks for joining us at Mentor Access. If you like what you just watched, please click like and subscribe, and also hit that bell so that you get notified when we have new videos come out. Thank you for supporting our mission.